All right, we are back. So, with the talk about Mil Muertes, a very similar comparison happened, but 30 years before in Japan, and I'm talking about Keiji Mutoh, also known as the Great Muta, who is, I will say, arguably one of the most influential Japanese wrestlers of this century. By a mile.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Now, the difference is that even back then, Japanese culture's wrestling was very, black trunks, black boots. It's all about the work inside of the ring. It was very respectful, not a lot of color, except for the Great Muta, who portrayed himself as a supernatural entity who used elaborate costumes, entrances, theatrics, face paint, the mist, which we'll talk about, and also they portrayed him of having superpowers.
Right.
And a lot of what his gimmick is that he was a dead, reincarnated samurai warrior.
Huh.
So a lot of what he did, a lot of the symbols that he had on his cheeks were very symbolic about that kind of death-related thing, which maybe Peanut Gallery can kind of elaborate on even further later. But I want to talk about the mist, because there are a couple of myths of the mist. I know, I thought about that all night.
Nick.
Now, the Great Muta was not the originator of the Asian mist, which is also called the Japanese mist or the poison mist.
Which is something that a lot of Japanese wrestlers use.
Right. Now, they use it because the credit of using the mist goes to another very cultural-based thing. Once again, another great thing called the Great Kabuki, who is based on, if I'm not mistaken, a Japanese urban legend hero turned villain. And also it was called the Poison Fog because the character of the Great Kabuki in lore would always have poison fog around when you are around, and that's when the kids were told to get inside when the poison fog rolled in.
This is a very culturally relevant episode.
It is. It really is. And the Great Muta portrayed a modern version of this. And despite them having very big similarities, the Great Kabuki never trained the Great Muta. Never. He was trained by Antonio Inoki, actually. So, I want to talk about the mist a little bit more because there are multiple colors, and each color has its own effect on people.
Nice.
So,
some color theory,
yeah. So the green mist, which is the most commonly used, and is to obstruct the opponent's vision.
Right.
Obviously, Tajiri popularized it here in in America with him in WWE, but the Great Muta used it in WCW even back in the 80s. Red mist. Red mist is said to burn the eyes. Or with Gangrel, he would use red mist. Same stuff, but he would also call it blood mist. Black. Black is the storyline to blinding somebody. And this was popularized here with Tajiri spraying Nydia, or Jamie Noble's girlfriend, with black mist, and that's why she was blind. That was actually a storyline tactic in Japan for 30 years to write somebody off of television temporarily.
So they wrote her off of television temporarily.
Or she was, using the cane and actually blind. There's blue...
you have to love ruthless aggression WWE.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about blue mist. Blue mist is a mist that puts opponents to sleep.
I haven't seen this used in WWE.
No, it has not been used in WWE.
It seems tacky.
Yep. Yellow mist, which is to paralyze the opponent.
Oh, Jesus.
And then
to Pokemon?
Right. And then there's purple mist, which is actually to cause memory loss. This mist is generally used in backstage segments, and Roxy Laveau used purple mist a lot in the past because of its voodoo incarnation. Once again, a great thing for you to talk about.
Oh, God,
you can do one thing about Papa Shango. I was actually thinking about that. That'd be a great one. Now, let's get back to the Great Muta, because a lot of the myths that he had really incorporated into this.
Right.
He is a judo black belt, and he started wrestling in 1984. And his first match was against Masahiro Chono.
Huh.
Fun fact.
Very fun.
He went on his U.S. excursion in 1985 around the South, where he won the Florida Heavyweight Champion. So this is NWA. The Southeastern United States Junior Heavyweight Champion.
Jesus.
And those were the only two titles that he won there because he came back in 1987 in New Japan. And his first titles that he won was the IWGP Tag Team Champions with Shiro Kachinaka. I butchered that immensely, but whatever.
He did.
He did compete in early WCW back in 1990.
Huh.
This is kind of when he started his Great Muta character because from the 80s up until I think like the late 80s, so 84 to 89, he was not the Great Muta that we know and love. He was introduced in 1990 as the son of the Great Kabuki, which is why we picked him up because their gimmicks were very, very similar.
Right.
From the elaborate costumes to the mist to even the moveset.
Right.
Except for the Shining Wizard.
Right.
He came back to Japan, I think in 1991, and in that time between 1990 and 2002, he won the IWGP Heavyweight Champion 4 times, the Tag Team Champions an additional 5 times with 4 different partners. He won the G1 Climax in 1995. He won the NWA World Champion in Japan once. He won the G1 Tag League 5 times with all different partners.
Jesus.
And he popularized Japanese wrestling outside of Japan with his appearances in WCW. So really, he was really the
Very
person.
influential.
He what? Right. He was really the first person to really bring that heavy interest of Japanese wrestling to the American scene because he took that Great Muta character to America. And now think of the face paint and the elaborate costumes and the mist and all of that.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a Japanese version of the Warrior.
Right, and it was literally that. He never really got up to the main event scene, which is a crime within of itself.
Right.
But we saw him in some
WCW booking.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that here in a second. So, he signed with All Japan Pro Wrestling in 2002. And he was immediately inserted into the Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion picture, obviously. Nice. Why wouldn't you? Because at this point, he's a legend.
Right.
In his time in All Japan, he won the Triple Crown belt 3 times, the World Tag Team Champions 5 times with 5 different partners.
Holy crap.
And the Champion Carnival 3 times, which is still unheard of. He made sporadic appearances back into New Japan in 2004 through 2020. Keep in mind, he debuted in 1984.
When was he in New Japan in 2020? Was that at the Jushin Thunder Liger's retirement?
He did the Jushin Thunder Liger thing. He was at the Giant Baba anniversary show like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was trained by, that generation.
Right.
So it was very respectful to at least make some appearances.
Right. Cool.
He competed in Wrestle 1 from 2013 to 2020, but he only won the W1 belt and the tag belt once.
Right.
So
obviously with only one partner.
Right. And he was on a part-time basis at that point because, he's been wrestling for about 40 years at this point.
Right.
I want to talk about him because he just made his appearance in Pro Wrestling Noah, and this is the first time that he appeared in Pro Wrestling Noah, and he is their current GHC Heavyweight Champion.
Oh, yes, and then isn't he supposed to make an appearance in America at some point in the near future as well?
Yes, so I also did want to talk about the rumor that because Noah and Impact Wrestling have a thing, there is talks about Keiji Mutoh defending the GHC Heavyweight Champion in Impact, and then there's also talks of AEW, but once again, this is all rumor and speculation.
Right.
What I want to really kind of emphasize is that, with our culture now, it's so easy to access that, but the Great Muta really brought in not only, the importance of great character work in Japan, which was so much needed at the time. But also he innovated a lot of moves.
Right.
The Azai Moonsault, that was a great Muta. The Shining Wizard, that was a great Muta. And he really popularized the Asian mist outside of Japan.
Right.
He has a, I think he has he's a steakhouse, a franchisee. He has a couple of different places in Tokyo where he does own a couple of steakhouses, very high-end steakhouses.
Right.
He has run for office a couple of times, was not successful, but he did. He was thinking about doing it again. And really, what this really kind of symbolizes of, number one, how important pro wrestling is in Japan.
Right.
But also, we really do have to thank the great Muta for a lot of things. Yeah. Not just that amazing character work and how important it is to have a great costume and what it really symbolizes, but also really bringing a very early interest of Japanese wrestling to an American culture.
Right.
And without the great Muta and the people that he wrestled with, we wouldn't know these other people.
Right.
Like Masahiro Chono and, even an early Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Right.
A lot of these matches they really brought in because of the great Muta and his exposure in America.
Nice.
So, when we come back, we're going to talk about the most bizarre, interesting pay-per-views I think I've seen from WWE this year so far.
There's only been 2.
Yes, but that's, it's still going to probably be that for a while.
Okay.
So when we come back, we're talking about Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.